Hello again. In this lecture, we're going to talk about the tab view controller. The tab view controller, like the navigation controller, is very commonly used in iOS, and you can see it all over the place. In fact, they're often used together. So a navigation view controller inside a tab view controller is a very common thing that I'll show you in a bit. You can see the tab view controller in iOS in the App Store, iTunes, on the simulator, I believe the Health app. Yes, as you can see, has these tabs at the bottom, and this is a tab view controller. And like the navigation controller, it doesn't have any UI itself. It exposes this tab view and allows you to display many view controllers inside a tab. And wait, let me just see if I can show you an example. For example, here, you can recognize that this is a navigation view controller, but it's inside a tab view controller. And you know that it's the navigation controller inside a tab view controller because while you're like navigating through here, and you can probably go multiple steps, you can switch the tabs to somewhere else. And when you come back, the navigation stack still remains the same, which means that you're switching the whole navigation controller out. Probably there's another navigation controller somewhere you can do. You can see this is presenting a view controller. It's nice to look at these things because it goes over the tab view controller. So now when you present, which was discussed in the first lecture of this module with the segue, when you present and display a modal, it goes over everything. So even though it's still within the tab view controller, you can't just sort of go to a different tab when this is displayed like that. And when you go back, you're still in the navigation stack, and it looks like you can go even further down, which is pretty cool. All right, so how do we use a tab view controller? Again, we're going to do this in a storyboard, which is a great way to visualize these kind of things. And usually it does a pretty good job. So we're going to keep our navigation view controller since it's pretty common that you have a navigation controller inside a tab controller. And again, we're going to use the embed feature inside the editor menu to embed this in the tab bar controller. When you click on that, again, everything gets pushed to the right some more. Now you have a tab controller with the nav controller as its first tab, and everything else remains the same. So immediately you see this weird box down here, and that's the first tab. This is the tab bar. Like, it's a bit thicker than a navigation bar, and it's even less flexible. So in the navigation bar, you can add custom items, you have a title. In the tab bar, you only have one tab bar item, which is one icon and optional text or optional icon and text per tab. You can't have anything else. You can sort of control how they're laid out, like how they're spaced, but that's it. So this one looks weird here because we don't have an image for it. There's also a few system options that are pretty useful and actually can handle lots of cases that you may have, like recents. We're going to say that this one is the favorite, so we'll give it a featured. Have a nice star for it. So that would be this tab. And to add another tab, different from the navigation controller, which only has one root controller, because that's how it works, a tab controller can obviously have more than one view controller at its root. So we're going to add this another controller down here without a navigation bar. And if you can add another segue so it's different. It's not called a root view controller anymore. So it's a relationship to its view controllers. And basically, it's a new tab. Immediately, when you do that, automatically, this guy gets its navigation item. Its tab item. And like a navigation item, the view controller itself customizes the look of this icon. And here you get a sort of a preview of what that looks like in the tab bar controller. We're going to say that this tab is a different one. Or else say it's recents. And we're going to give a nice background color to distinguish it. Fiery red. All right, so we're going to leave it at 2 for now. And when you build and run, go to our nice social thing. We now have a tab bar, and it starts it always defaults to the first view controller, and you can change that in code, but you can customize it from the controller itself. Probably. Maybe the bar, maybe not. All right, but you can now tap on the tab, and automatically it changes the tab for you. And there's no animation here. That is intentional. It's not meant to be an animation. It's as responsive as possible. And just like in the Health app, if I push onto this first view controller and I go to recents, it just switches away. So in the tab controller, all of these tabs are alive at all times. Like when you switch away, this guy stays alive. The whole navigation stack stays alive. The whole controller and everything on it stays alive, so that basically they all have their own states. They're basically running in parallel, and you can switch back and forth at any time. So that means in this paradigm, you don't want anything here like on one tab controlling a different tab. You want to maintain. So they should function separately when you're using a tab controller, because it can be very messy and you'll have a terrible time trying to perform something on this tab through an action on this tab. All right, so that's the basic idea of tab controllers. It is an array tab controllers stores. The tab controller stores an array of view controllers, which are all tabs, and they can be navigation view controllers. They can be any sort of custom view controller, and this displays them down at the bottom. And they need to have a tab bar item, which customizes the icon. And that's all there is to a tab controller. It's a lot simpler than a navigation controller. There's no concept of the stack and such. But there's one interesting one, which is sort of the more tab. So if you have enough tabs, we're going to go ahead and copy and paste this guy a few times. So you have 1, 2, and we're going to go up to a few more. So if you have 5, maybe 6, we'll do one more. I'm just copy and pasting these guys. Now you have 6 view controllers, and I'm going to make them all tabs. So when there's too many tabs, iOS actually automatically sort of coalesces them for you into this more tab. So you have 6 here, and it looks like it can display nicely from the storyboard's point of view. But when you run, there's not going to be enough space for 6 tabs. In fact, there's only space for 5. And so automatically you get this more button. When you press it, you get this free navigation button. You even can edit this to organize the tabs. This is all free in the system, and look how cool that is. You can organize these tabs. It's kind of cool. But you can go to the tab, but with this extra tab on top. So basically, all these tabs are still standalone and all work. But you get this interesting navigation tab here. This thing becomes one tab that has a navigation controller with a table view where each row goes to the rest of your view controllers. And this is all free, so this is very convenient. And you can see this being used in say Facebook app, and you can customize this as well. So that's all there is really to tab controllers. In the beginning of this relationship segue on the prepare for segue also gets called on the tab controller when it sort of embeds this view controller. So you can do some customizations there as well. Otherwise, you can see that in the tab controller, all these tabs and view controllers are siblings of each other, whereas in the navigation controller, they're on a stack and they have sort of a hierarchical relationship. So by using tab bars, tab controllers, and navigation controllers effectively, your app can do a lot of things. It can be pretty complicated. It can have many features, and if you organize them nicely, these two tools are enough to perform the navigation of, I would say, 90%, easily 95% of apps. These will be all you need. So I hope you enjoyed this module, and we'll see you soon.